There he is, Mr. Mankato. There he is, your training camp hero. The dreams of a dozen men who were late-round draft picks, playing well in full team practice. Oh, he may turn out to be caught before the 53. Oh, there he is.
And now that your ears are all bleeding and your eyes are bleeding and your face is melting like that guy at the end of Raiders of the Lost Ark.
You own it, dude. Own it.
Welcome to the special annual edition of the Mackey and Judd Show, where we unveil Mr. Mankato odds. The 2020 Mr. Mankato competition at Vikings training camp is set to commence in a very weird way this year. So on this episode, and by the way, we're going to get to Action Movie Rewind later in this podcast, but we've got Chris Long from 5 Eyewitness News Sports Department. We've got ESPN Vikings beat reporter Courtney Cronin. And before we get into, and by the way, we have like 20 or 30 minutes here, and so I'm gonna set a ground rule right off the bat because there's 15 draft picks, there's 25 players on this list. Mm-hmm. We're not gonna go through every single name. Chris did that in 5,000 words on ScoreNorth.com, and so this will be sort of a featured highlight, speedy run through the list when we get there. Chris was up till 4 a.m. doing this for ScoreNorth.com too, by the way. So.
A tradition like no other. I can't do it at noon. Like, that's no fun. It's got to feel like I'm cramming for a college final.
It's impressive. I'll say that for you.
So just to knock out a quick little piece of history and to answer a question. Question number 1 is, why do you guys still call it Mr. Mankato? Well, for starters, for budget reasons, the branding, the change to like the Egan Everyman and getting all the logos changed and the apparel and the rights partnerships, it's too much of a hassle. Mm-hmm. And we like the alliteration of Mr. Mankato in the history. So it remains Mr. Mankato for another year. We originally started this on Mackey and Judd back in 2014 as a way to highlight under the radar Vikings players at training camp. And Adam Thielen was our first ever winner of the competition. We awarded him, Judd, if you remember, with a styrofoam cooler from the gas station down the street.
Yeah, he was thrilled.
A bag of Funyuns and some off-brand Dr. Pepper.
Threw it to the corner of the practice field, walked away, and we kept the Funyuns.
I think he took the comb.
Who knew, by the way, at the moment that he was accepting that, who knew where that and this were both going to, where that and this were all going to go?
What do you think has reached loftier heights, Adam Thielen or the Mr. Mankato competition?
Oh, I think Thielen's done a little bit better on a national profile, right?
I know what you're talking about.
It's probably true. So, here's how this works in terms of the official rules. And if you want to go through this whole thing on ScoreNorth.com, you can settle in, pour yourself a couple cocktails this weekend, and read through Chris's manifesto. But there are 4 relatively simple rules to the Mr. Mankato competition. Number 1, the player must be a 3rd-round pick or later. Undrafted players count as well. Rule number 2, players must not be established NFL players. There is a little leeway here, and the committee gets to decide, like Chris brings up Drew Samia as an example. He was an active player in Week 17 last year, but he didn't really do anything, and so he is still eligible for 2020. Rule number 3, if a player does not fall into either of the first 2 categories, a committee member may put that player up for review. I tried to get Christian Ponder back on this after he had fallen completely off the radar.
Yeah, that was much.
You guys wouldn't let me, and that's fine. And rule number 4, the competition runs through the entire preseason, not just the Mankato, or in this case, Egan portion. It is a marathon, not a sprint. But unlike previous years where we would get 4 preseason games to watch guys like Audi Cole score 2 defensive touchdowns to solidify themselves, we really get like 2 weeks of practice, no fans, and just media. So,
and I'm just going to throw this to the committee. We may have to wait until after Week 1 plays to really award this, because where's the finish line? There's not preseason games. We don't know. Is there going to be the big inter-squad scrimmage? We might need Week 1 to be able to figure out who wins this thing.
I would also add too, we do have mail-in balloting for Mr. Mankato, but it has to be postmarked. It has to be.
I don't agree with that. No. We're going to have Mr. Mankato voting fraud. That's not going to happen. I'm removing all the mailboxes from the city immediately. I'm going to go through with my car, pick them up, throw them in my trunk, and get rid of them.
The
Okay.
Mr. Mankato Postal Service has been defunded over the past
Exactly
few months.
right.
It's a problem
Exactly
right now.
right. These are tough times. It's not going to happen.
Oh my goodness.
So, Chris, why don't you give us, just speed through real quick the odds? Just go all the way through everyone you have ranked and the field, and then we're going to kind of throw it to you and Courtney to break down some of the interesting and top candidates before we eventually pick who we think will win toward the end of this episode.
There's kind of 6 tiers this year, and I am going to scroll through these really quick because every year I kind of go, oh man, I got to write this thing, and it's fun and I enjoy it once I'm in it, but it seems a little daunting. And then I started compiling the list of guys that probably need to be on the list this year, and it was, thanks Rick Spielman for your 15 draft players and 10 more UDFAs and a couple holdovers from last year. So we're going to have to sort of, every year it's nebulous. We all get to decide what Mr. Mankato is to us when we pick our winner, whether that's us on the committee or people that vote or whatever. It's like an MVP award. What exactly does that mean? This year, more than ever, there's a different bar for different players. Some guys could be Mr. Mankato if they simply maybe make the practice squad, whereas other guys need to be a week 1 starter if they're going to be a realistic shot at being Mr. Mankato. So you'll look at the odds and say, well, this guy's an undrafted free agent. Why is he here? Or this guy was the 3rd round draft pick. Why is he here? There's going to be different ways for guys to figure out how to rise to the top of this class for Mr. Mankato. So the favorite, I think, is Cam Dantzler. He's got a pretty clear shot to get some potential playing time. If not, maybe contend for a starting role. He's our favorite at 3-1 cornerback. High draft pick at a position that there is a lot of room to move on the depth chart. Seems to be an easy way in. Neville Clark is an undrafted guy who is also a cornerback. Same kind of thing. I think he could get a lot of reps, get a lot of vision, or get a lot of looks. And even though he's not coming in nearly as highly touted as Cam Dantzler, he's going to have a chance to get some playing time, which for an undrafted guy is pretty big. Alexander Hollins, he's one of the guys like Drew Samia that played a little bit last year. He's 5-1, as is Neville Clark. Alexander Hollins played a little bit toward the end of last year, made some catches in that Week 17 game. Receiver, same kind of thing. There is definitely going to be room at the back of the depth chart for somebody to pop in there and grab maybe the wide receiver 3, definitely wide receiver 4. And then the last guy really on the top 4 tier of favorites is Kenny Willekes, and he's a great story. I got to go to my notes here because remember I did all this at 3:00 in the morning. 7th round draft pick out of Michigan State. Here are some of his bullet points. Drafted in the last round, he went from a college walk-on to the Big Ten Defensive Lineman of the Year. He majored in chemistry, didn't have a single Division I offer out of high school. He has this goofy plyometric workout that got posted online, and here's the kicker. As a kid, he attended the Kirk Cousins passing camp.
Wow.
And now he's
signed him?
Yep.
Wow, that's unnecessary.
He's a defensive end, so maybe he was using that to craft his future chasing quarterbacks. But
do we have? Is there like a Kirk Cousins passing camp tree of prominent guys who've come out of there? Do we know who else has been part of the?
I couldn't tell you anybody else who's come out of there, but
it's like this. So his passing camp tree is like the Belichick coaching tree.
Knobloch, Steve Sachs, Steve Blass. Come on. Mackie Sasser.
So Willekes is the last kind of favorite at 6-1. And then we'll go through a couple other guys here. Brandon Dillon. I don't believe, and check me if I'm wrong, have we ever had a reigning Mr. Mankato up
come back for more?
Up for the next year?
Boy, well, here's the, let me go up. I'll scroll up here for people watching on the YouTube channel. The list of previous Mr. Mankato winners.
No.
Brandon Dillon, Kyle Sloter was 2018. By the way, Chad Beebe to not at any point get the Mr. Mankato award is a massive failure. Is Chad Beebe the Lee Westwood of Mr. Mankato, the greatest Mr. Mankato candidate to never have won the Mr. Mankato award?
Courtney will remember he got hurt in training camp.
It's a shame.
That's what got him. So yeah,
Bauer, Curse, Diggs. How about the back-to-back Thielen and Diggs in 2014-15? Yeah. And by the way, it doesn't like whatever they do after they win Mr. Mankato, if they become established or not, has no bearing on. Now it has bearing on if you come back into the competition, like Brandon Dillon, for instance. If you did nothing, you're still eligible for back-to-backs. We've never had a back-to-back winner though.
And I actually listened to the awards ceremony show from last year while I was preparing this last night, and it was. I kind of forgot. Brandon Dillon was a runaway winner. We all thought Alexander Madison, there was no way he wasn't going to get it. And Courtney, you can talk about that. Brandon Dillon, there was no discussion. It was a slam dunk.
He made this unbelievably athletic one-handed catch. I remember we were on the practice field, like closest to the building. It was like on like a Wednesday. And I remember Kirk turned to like me and a few other beat writers who were standing there. He's like, we call him the Marion Flash. And I was like, what? Like, and obviously he's an NAIA guy. He went to Marion University, which is in Indianapolis. And I was like, okay. So that name kind of stuck, and watching him during the preseason games, like, okay, wow. Like, this is an offense. I mean, Gary Kubiak loves his tight ends. They like to use them a lot in the passing game, like potentially. And heck, he made the opening day roster. He wasn't on it for very long, but I think that was definitely what solidified it too. He had an awesome camp.
The point I made was my family lives in Indianapolis, and I had never even heard of Marion University. It's 6 miles from my parents' house, and I had no idea where it was.
Now you know.
So comes back. He has a chance to be crazy. I think we still only have. We still only have one 2-time Heisman winner, correct? Archie Griffin.
I believe that's true.
Mm-hmm.
Tim Tebow? Did Tebow win it twice?
I don't think so.
He just won it once.
I think Griffin
only won it once.
At Ohio State won it twice, and that's it, I think.
Right.
So Brandon Dillon, there's always the pass catchers, because they're, as Courtney said, you make that one unbelievable one-handed catch that causes the quarterback to give you a nickname, you're in the mix. Courtney Davis is in there with him, so is KJ Osborne. Those two are kind of cut and paste Mr. Mankato candidates. Courtney Davis is the typical best undrafted free agent on the planet coming out of the draft. Everybody thought he was going to go to the Dallas Cowboys. The Vikings swooped in, threw a bunch of money at him and got him. And then KJ Osborne is the, fastest guy on the board who's going to have a shot if he can just get open 2 or 3 times to make some plays. So all three of those guys, Dillon, Davis, and Osborne, are 8-1. I don't want to go too much through everybody else, but then you get into your sort of middle shots. I'll just give you the names: Dylan Mitchell, Drew Samia, DJ Wanham, Oli Udoh, Josh Metellus, and Brian Cole. A lot of different guys. Some are just maybe a little blocked on the depth chart. Some are guys like Drew Samia, who, for him to win Mr. Mankato, he was sort of regarded maybe as the steal of the draft last year, and just kind of sat back. And the phrase that I kept seeing in all the articles I was reading as I prepped all this was he had a redshirt year last year. He was stuck behind Josh Klein and didn't get to play that much, but came from an amazing unit at Oklahoma, blocked for 2 Heisman Trophy winners. I want to make sure I'm not confusing my guys here. I believe the crazy stat on him was, in 2018 as a senior, he was a Big 12 Defensive Lineman of the Year. He took 400 pass blocking snaps and didn't allow a single sack.
Wow.
But with all that, for him to be Mr. Mankato, he's got to be the week 1 starter. He can't have a good camp. He's got to make it that far. So the bar for him is a lot higher than, maybe a guy I mentioned earlier, Kenny Willekes, the 7th rounder who won the national award. It's called the Burlsworth Trophy. I'd never even heard of it. It's given to the top former walk-on in college football. So if he's even in the rotation on the depth chart and sees any playing time in week 1, Kenny Willekes has a shot at winning, but a Drew Samia, he would have to start, be entrenched as the starter to win. And then we can go down further. There's a bunch of guys we can kick in. There's a couple guys with some pretty good stories later on, but I don't want to filibuster too much here.
The absolute key to this entire thing is on this show. It's Courtney. Courtney, we are going to have to rely on you heavily and exclusively, because it's not like we can come and go from practices, right? Mm-hmm. And we're not going to have games. So you are going to be the linchpin, the most important person in actually helping people like me, Mackey, Declan, decide who is going to win Mr. Mankato 2020.
In fact, if it rains at every practice and Courtney is the designated pool reporter, it is state-run Mr. Mankato media. She's the only person that reports on what's happening.
And that could happen today if we're looking at the weather forecast, Courtney.
That's what she said.
Yeah.
I mean, I've got my notebook ready to go. Like, this is only going to be used for keeping notes on Mr. Mankato, all 50 prospects, according to Chris's list. But no, I mean, it's, I can be the eyes and ears if you want me to. It's just a lot of responsibility.
You've got to be.
I'm really worried.
We've got no choice. It's in your hands.
I'll help when I can. I'll be down there occasionally.
Thank
We're
you.
expecting to come down today, but yeah, if it rains or thunders, we're going to be outside pressed against the window.
Yeah.
So Courtney, I will say one thing about linemen like Drew Samia. It's really hard, even when you get full preseason games, to watch some of these players. Linemen have a tough one because the guys who stand out are wide receivers, cornerbacks, quarterbacks, players who either touch the ball or can alter a play on the edge of some kind, or pass rushers. So it is pretty tough for you're rarely going to see a lineman as the odds-on favorite on Chris Long's odds report for good reason. But Courtney, as you sort of digest Cam Dantzler as the favorite and everybody else here on this list, who are some names that stand out to you, and who are a couple long shots when you look even further? Like, I'm kind of surprised Nate Stanley and Jake Browning, both at 20-1 as quarterbacks. Those guys would have better odds if you could watch them play in preseason games, but we don't get that luxury this year.
Yeah, I think as I look down Chris's list, because I know who I'm voting for, I'm very excited to get that one out there. But, the two offensive linemen from Oregon and Oregon State, Blake Brandel and Brady Ayalo, depending upon how the numbers game works out with the offensive line and what they do, I mean, those to me are kind of like the long shot ones that I wouldn't completely rule out of the mix. I mean, it is going to be kind of hard to tell a second team left tackle, or right tackle, I think is what Blake Brandel is. Can he do enough to really impress you? But I think it's just if you start seeing guys interchange on the offensive line and one of these second team guys getting some first team reps, however it would work out. I don't obviously think of the tackle spots, but hell, if Brady Ayalo somehow snuck into the right guard competition, that to me is an easy one. The safeties will be interesting too, like Miles Dorn, Josh Metellus. There's not a lot of depth at safety. It's not a lot of proven depth. It's all very young. So who's getting those reps behind Harrison Smith and Anthony Harris? Same thing with cornerback. There's so many corners on the roster right now outside of the top 5 guys, which, you don't really anticipate. I mean, Cam Dantzler is the lowest of the 5 that you would anticipate being part of the mix. I have a question about that though. Can Chris Boyd be in this? Because he's a second-year player. He's a 6th round pick. Would he technically be eligible? Because I mean, he's somebody that I anticipate, having, if he has a really good camp, he might be in line for some serious playing time.
He's stuck on the 53 all last year, right?
Yes.
Or basically all last year.
Yes.
For Chris
So
Boyd.
does that not count?
See, this is where we get into, if you want to put him up for vote, and the 5 of us on this committee want to have a 50% or more vote rate for you.
Right.
I think we could then put him on the list, Chris.
Yeah.
Is that how it works?
Yeah.
He was a 7th round pick. He was a 7th round pick, not a 6th round pick. So I mean, that's what, as far as I know, I'm looking at the thing right now.
He's not on there. I had him falling just on he was on the team all of last year, but it's that line can move.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, as they speak about cornerbacks, when I, talking about Harrison Hand potentially getting into the mix there, I mean, the guy has position flexibility. He can play all over the place. You can play him up near the box if you want to. So it's the more you can do, especially as a cornerback or, any sort of defensive back, I think make splash plays, do stuff like that, because that's going to, rise you from low odds to probably improving your chances. But I don't know. The favorites this year seem too obvious to me. I just don't see anybody winning outside of the top 4.
I agree with that.
I think that's, I mean, and I actually not the top 4, probably the top 5 or 6, because I'll throw Courtney Davis into that too. I think Brandon Dillon and Courtney Davis, that's kind of where I cap it below there. But there's so many guys this year. There's 15 draft picks. So that's really hard to, discern, outside of that group.
This is not the year. This is not the year to get cute, folks. This is not the year to come up with some curveball we're just not going to see enough. And without games, Courtney, I think you're exactly right. I think we've got this list in reality is probably about 5 guys.
Brandon Dillon was not even named on the list last year.
Right, but we got a chance to see him play in games. That's the problem.
Strange things can happen, but I agree. It's just the nature of this year is going to be really strange. And
the pandemic is costing people.
A couple other guys I want to actually mention just for storyline standpoint that wouldn't have to do much in terms of, if they make the team and we see them at all. Jake Lucina is a fun story. Yep, Corbin Lucina's kid. And I read it somewhere. It was hard to believe. And I think it's accurate. There's never been a father-son Viking combo. Judd, you've been around longer than I have. I read that somewhere and I racked my brain. And I know there's been some brothers, but there's
Loudermilk's kid was on the practice squad, but I don't know. But I don't know that there has been a father-son active roster at different times combo.
So you got
I think that's right.
You got the local kid who was trying to be the first ever legacy. He was a Division II All-American. And then the guy at the bottom of the list, read the story. I'm not going to go through the whole story because his alone could have been its own article. Dan Chisnan, I think I'm saying his name right.
Yeah, the wide receiver.
He is the longest of long shots in this year's Mr. Mankato. And he is absolutely, if he makes any progress toward getting on the depth chart, is going to be a story. I should probably just say this and tease the article. His entire 5-year college run, he caught 3 balls for 66 yards, and yet he signed as an undrafted free agent. And he had an interesting path through college at Penn State. He was a national level track runner. He's faster than all heck. He's 6'3". So a guy, and one of his catches, by the way, one of those 3 was in the Gopher Penn State game at TCF Bank Stadium. But the guy didn't play football for 3 years in college. He just went to track, came back to football, was super guy, special teamer, came back his 5th year. And at the spring game makes this amazing touchdown where he turns on the Jets and James Franklin picks up the megaphone and announces that he's going to be on scholarship for football his 5th year after having been on a track scholarship for 3 years. Guy caught 3 balls in college, 5 years in college, 2.5 of them on the football team, caught 3 balls, and the Vikings signed him. If this guy makes a splash at all, it will make the Mr. Mankato voting very simple.
Yeah. That's an awesome story. And another quick plug to the scorenorth.com official Mr. Mankato odds manifesto that is 5,000 words long. And so you can go check that out. I think we should start off with we'll start with Declan and go around the room here.
All right.
Let's make our picks. Let's go on the record here. Who do you got taking down the Mr. Mankato 2020 crown or styrofoam cooler?
We talked about it at the beginning, and I really still like his odds. I'm taking Drew Samia. I think Drew Samia is gonna wow some people in training camp. I believe another phrase they used in his scouting report, Chris and Courtney, was he was nasty at Oklahoma. Nasty. And I want to see if with him having this redshirt year, if he's going to be able to step in and find a guard spot. He's on the outside looking in. I get that. But if he's the week 1 starter, like Chris said, he definitely gets it. And I want to see what he's able to do. He had a great college career, and I think he's going to turn some heads in training camp. And my pick is Drew Samia.
I would think for Drew Samia to win this, he probably does. Is it fair to say he probably has to start?
Yes.
He's gonna week 1.
He's gonna have to win.
He has to win the right guard job. That's
Okay.
mandatory.
Yep.
It could happen.
Courtney's
Take it. All right, Courtney.
All right. This one's easy for me. I'm going with Kenny Willekes. Number 1. The guy sounds like a football guy. He opens his mouth, and it's I mean this with in the most endearing and yes, that type of thing. You hear it in my ear. I mean this in the most endearing way. He's like the guy who wants to take a beer can and crush it on his head after he drinks it.
Yeah. Football.
Yes, football.
Yeah.
Love it.
Here's something that I just love about his story. So he comes to Michigan State, as we know, as 220-pound walk-on linebacker. And he leaves school as the career leader in tackles for loss. He had 51. And so he had a broken leg that he got in the 2018 bowl game. I don't know who they played.
Football.
So after he came back from that broken leg, he leads the team in tackles, ranked 5th in the Big Ten, and had a career high 10.5 sacks as a senior, and then became the first defensive player in program history to win MVP twice. Sold. I mean, the guy is football. The guy, he's a steal. People thought he could have been a late 3rd round, 4th round pick, and he fell to the Vikings all the way in the 7th round. I remember, on draft day in April, draft Twitter freaked out, oh man, love this pick, steal of the draft for the Minnesota Vikings. So that intrigued me. So I kind of did some research, and I mean, Chris put the whole, the litany of everything that defines his career out. You just can't love a story like that more. It literally is a rags to riches football type story of the undersized guy who, I'll play anywhere they put me. You put me at defensive end, put me a linebacker, put me at safety, put me at, God knows where. He'll do anything. He'll play up in the box. He'll go back. I mean, it doesn't matter. This guy will literally do anything. And I like that about him. And I honestly think, just given kind of what the situation is with like the rotational edge rushing, those prospects right now, it's like him, DJ Wanham, there's just not a lot of depth there. Stacey Keeley, I think, is in that mix too. But I like this guy just because of his background, his story, and I think it's going to be really fun to see like how they use him. He just seems like a true football guy who's going to like run through a wall. I mean, literally, listen to him talk. He sounds like a football man. So
Football.
We cannot play that drop. We cannot play that drop enough. So he's my choice.
And he went to Kirk Cousins passing camp.
And he went to Kirk Cousins passing camp. And you know that Kirk is going to end up getting that story or getting that question at some point. Yeah.
Love it. Love it. All right. Chris Long. Let's go to Chris Long here.
The odds tell me Cam Dantzler. I'll stick with that. I think he's got the easiest path, and he's going to get most benefit of the doubt, being the earliest drafted player on the list. But if you're looking for value, Williker's story is terrific. I think Courtney Davis has a shot. I'm wavering because I'm not sure. I'm going between two guys. Alexander Hollins got playing time at the end of last year. I'm going to take Courtney Davis, undrafted free agent. He's the guy that, best undrafted free agent out there, and the Vikings had to outbid somebody to get him. He got a 6-figure deal. That's not huge in the terms of NFL contracts, but it is when you start talking undrafted guys. Mm-hmm. And he's got some physical skills that what we are able to see, it's going to be really easy to see him if he does something special. So I'll take Courtney Davis.
Judd Zulgad.
In times of pandemic, keep it simple as possible. Cam Dantzler. He plays Zim's position. He plays the hits. He's got a chance, right? I mean, we don't know who's going to succeed. We don't know if Holton Hill's going to do 2 stupid things in practice that we don't see, but they decide to bench him or cut him or something. They drafted Dantzler. He's on the precipice of not being eligible for this award, which actually makes him a decent pick. If this was not a pandemic, I would come up with a gutsier pick. But it's going to be so tough, and it's going to be difficult for guys, for us to see them, for guys to succeed and flash, as they like to say in football. So I'll keep it simple as possible and go with Cam Dantzler. Philip.
I'm shocked, Judd. I offered you a bait pick again. You didn't take it. I gave you a pair option. The 2 Baylor guys named Lynch. I put James Lynch and Blake Lynch together.
Since that moron put his foot through a plate glass window, I'm out. I got screwed by a punk quarterback who decided to try and kick in a window. Idiot.
Was that Sloter?
Tyler Henneke.
No,
Tyler Henneke. Okay, that's right.
Completely. It was him and Stave, and I thought it was the greatest pick, and I ended up with Joel Bleepin Stave as my lone pick then.
What was the story there? That Heineke probably got drunk and was coming back with some fast food or something?
Yeah, he was trying to get back into his. I think he was trying to get back into his dorm room.
He was with his buddy.
Coming back from a movie.
Yes, and they didn't have the key, and supposedly he said, "I'll kick it in." Thanks a lot.
Amazing.
Anyway, that's my pick.
I wish I could pivot off of picking the same guy as Judd, but I had Cam Dantzler going into this, regardless of whatever the odds were going to say. Chris had him as the odds-on favorite, and I'm with Judd. In the absence of being able to watch preseason games, I'm picking the chalk here. I'm picking the number 1 seed to win here, and I will leave you with this nugget about Cam Dantzler. So he played 31 games in college. And obviously in the SEC conference, he did play in 2 bowl games, so outside of SEC competition. So 29 of his games in the SEC in the regular season, 1/3 of those games against Auburn, Alabama, LSU, and Georgia. And so he has seen NFL talent up and down throughout 3 years in college, and he's going to be my guy. I don't know if it means he has to play significant snaps in week 1 to win this or some other measurement, but that's the beauty of Mr. Mankato.
Courtney Cronin.
It's very nebulous.
She's our person here. She's the key.
No college receiver on all those teams that you mentioned ever gained more than 60 yards in a game against Cam Dantzler, and the passer rating against him 43.6.
That's pretty badass.
You spike the ball, it's like 6 points lower.
That's
Mel Kiper Jr. right there, folks. Our own Mel Kiper Jr.
Football.
He is the Mel Kiper of Mr. Mankato, and you can read the full odds report at scorenorth.com. So any other final thoughts from anybody going into this year's very bizarre Mr. Mankato competition?
I need a nap.
Yeah, I definitely think you've earned that. I wouldn't be surprised if it ends up becoming, just given the numbers game here with the amount of corners that they have, like it could be a cornerback, like neck and neck finish here. Because we haven't even mentioned Neville Clark, really. Obviously Chris went, ran it down and all that, but there's him, there's Harrison Hand. I know I'm forgetting somebody else, outside of Dantzler, but, it's a really good pool of cornerbacks and really defensive backs too, because, there's Metellus, there's Cole, the two safeties. They're rebuilding that secondary in a lot of ways. So look for the depth pieces and who shines for that, because that could very easily be I think the first Mr. Mankato defensive back Mr. Mankato since J-Ron Curse in 2016. That'd be
right.
Yep.
J-Ron Curse.
Yep. J-Ron Curse, man, 2006. He had
Didn't work out for him quite as
established
well as
NFL
it did
players.
for Diggs and Thielen.
Oh, the favorite in 2016, the favorite was Moritz Boehringer, the
Yeah.
German
Bobo.
wide receiver.
Bobo.
My guy.
Mobo.
I just saw his name. He's in camp somewhere.
So did I. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, he
Good
just
for
won't
Mobo.
go away.
Amazing. Well,
Won't
a
leave.
huge thank you to Courtney and Chris, and you can follow along. We have a Mr. Mankato. It's at MR Mankato Vikes Twitter handle, but we haven't tweeted from it in 2 years. We might have to fire that thing back up at some point.
Gotta find
Too.
the password for that.
Yeah, that's actually step one. Find the password this weekend for Mr. Mankato. So Courtney, Chris, thanks for hanging out, and see you guys at private training camp.
Nice work. See you.